Hi everyone, we're the Developmental Theory Group number 2. The members of this group are Megan Ferguson, Lindsay Hannon, Danielle Messner, Ashley Rosas, and Jessica Williams. Just a quick overview of the objectives that we're going to cover during our presentation. We're going to look at the factors influencing growth and development. We'll take a look at Piaget's theory of cognitive development. We'll apply developmental theories when planning interventions in the care of patients throughout the lifespan. And lastly, we'll cover Kohlberg's moral developmental theory as well as criticisms of his work.
For identifying factors that influence growth and development, it is important to first distinguish between the concepts of growth and development. Growth refers to the physical changes that occur from prenatal through older adulthood. It also demonstrates advancement and deterioration. Development, on the other hand, refers to the biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional changes that begin at conception and continue throughout a person's lifetime. It is dynamic and includes progression. Ability to progress through phases influences the overall health and well-being of an individual. There are several factors that can influence an individual's growth and their development. These factors include environment, socio-emotional, physical, biological, and learning and reinforcement. The environment plays a critical role in human development and is important to understand its value in the early stages of life. Some of the environmental factors influencing early stages of development involve the physical surroundings and geographical conditions of the place in which an individual lives. It also includes their social environment and relationships with family and peers. Environment also includes the physical and psychological stimulation an individual receives. The environment that someone is constantly immersed in contributes to their success in their current stage of development and their ability to progress onto later stages. The way in which individuals, especially children, respond to their environment significantly influences the way others respond to them and their needs as well. For example, a good school and a loving, supportive family helps to build strong social and interpersonal skills. This is different for individuals who are raised in a stressful or unsupportive environment. These individuals may struggle through their current stage of development and in their later development stages. In regards to growth and development, it is important to be aware of the value of parent involvement starting with infant care. The physical and emotional presence of a parent can directly affect a child's development through their stages of life. It is critical to provide an appropriate physical and emotional presence at a young age to develop a strong sense of safety and security. One of the important aspects of the physical factor is nutrition. Nutrition is a critical component to growth. This is because everything the body needs to build and repair itself comes from the food we eat. When the body does not get enough nutrients, malnutrition occurs. Malnutrition can cause deficiency diseases that adversely affect the growth and development of children. However, overeating or an unhealthy diet can lead to obesity and further health problems such as cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes. Development through stages of life can also be delayed or regress when disease is present. One of the most important aspects of the biological factor is genetics. Genes direct the growth and the sequence of development. For example, genes direct the growth rate in things like height for an individual. But it is also important to remember that growth can only be reached if environmental conditions are sufficient. Learning has a direct impact on development. Without learning and accumulating new information, it is almost impossible to progress into other stages of development. Learning influences all factors of development. Learning reflects physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, social, and attitudinal developments. All knowledge, skill, habits, all acquaintances with people and things, all attitudes built up in your dealing with people and things have been learned, whether good or bad. Reinforcement is a factor in learning where an activity or exercise is repeated and refined to solidify the lessons learned. Things like activity or exercise are essential to learning because we learn by doing. It may be a motor activity like playing an instrument, or it may be a sensory activity like listening to music. Because we learn by doing, any lesson that is taught has to be repeated until the right results are obtained. It is important to identify factors influencing growth and development in order to be mindful about an individual's progression through stages of life. The ability to progress through developmental stages influences overall health of an individual. The success or failure experienced within a stage affects the ability to move forward and complete following stages.
everyone, this is Ashley, as you can see from my picture on the left. I'm going to be discussing Piaget's theory of cognitive development. So cognitive theories are used to stress how people learn to think and make sense of their world. So Jean Piaget was very interested in the development of children's intellectual organizations, so he observed them to see how they think, reason, and perceive the world. He created this theory, which includes 4 periods that are related to age and demonstrate specific categories of knowing and understanding. Within each of these primary periods of cognitive development are specific stages. So for period 1, there is a sensory motor stage, and that is from birth to 2 years old. Period 2 is the pre-operational, between the years of 2 and 7. Period 3 is concrete operations, 7 to 11 years. And period 4 includes formal operations, and this begins at 11 years old and continues through adulthood. So there's actually a 5th stage that Jean Piaget didn't actually incorporate into his theory, but developmentalists have actually proposed it, and that is the post-formal thought, which also occurs in adulthood. Starting with period 1, sensory motor stage, which occurs from birth to 2 years old. During this stage, infants develop schemas or action patterns for dealing with their environment. So schemas become self-initiated activities, and their successful achievement leads to greater exploration. And some examples of this are hitting, looking, grasping, and kicking. During this stage, the child learns about himself and his environment through motor and reflex actions. And they also learn about object permanence, which is when they understand that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen, heard, or touched. And Piaget considered that to be the most important achievement for this stage. This next stage is the pre-operational stage, and here children learn to think with the use of symbols and mental images. They also exhibit egocentrism, which means that they only see objects and people from their own point of view. They believe that everyone experiences the world exactly as they do. And they also start demonstrating animism, in which they personify objects. So during this stage, play becomes a primary means by which they start learning about the world. For stage 3, which is concrete operations, at this stage, children are now able to perform mental operations. So a child can think about an action that before had to be performed physically, and they are now able to describe a process without actually doing it. They are also able to coordinate 2 concrete perspectives, so theirs and of a friend. They achieve seriation, which is the ability to mentally classify objects according to their quantitative dimensions. And they achieve conservation, which is the ability to see objects or quantities as remaining the same despite a change in their physical appearance. So this is when they are able to distinguish the phases of water. The 4th stage, known as formal operations, begins at 11 years old and continues into adulthood. This transition occurs during which there is a prevalence of egocentric thought. So adolescents may demonstrate feelings and behaviors of self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is the belief that their actions and appearance are constantly being scrutinized, and this may lead them to take more risk-taking behaviors. As they mature, however, the thinking moves to abstract and theoretical subjects, and they also gain the capacity to reason. For Piaget, this marked the end of cognitive development, so this was his final stage of his theory. This 5th stage, or post-formal thought, was actually incorporated by other developmentalists. So research today supports that adults do not always arrive at one answer to a problem, but instead accept several possible solutions. So adults demonstrate the ability to recognize that answers vary from situation to situation and that solutions need to be sensible. So adults change how they use knowledge. So they emphasize a shift from attaining knowledge or skills to using knowledge for goal achievement. And adults incorporate emotions, logic, practicality, and flexibility when making decisions. So that is why developmentalists added this 5th stage, which also occurs in adults.
We're going to move on to Kohlberg's moral development theory. He expanded on Piaget's existing cognitive theory and came up with 6 stages under 3 levels. I threw a picture of myself in there so that you would know who's talking. Megan Ferguson. This level, level 1, pre-conventional reasoning, is known as the pre-moral level. This is when individuals have limited cognitive thinking and it's mainly egocentric. This is seen in children, and egocentric thinking involves thinking only for oneself without considering the feelings or desires of others. This level involves thinking based on their likes and pleasures and uses punishment as a guide for behavior decisions. There is an important window here where the nurse can reinforce to the child that they do not become ill because of their wrongdoing, as many of them believe. The first stage of pre-conventional reasoning is punishment and obedience orientation. This stage is experienced when a child involves absolute obedience to authority and strict rule following. Actions and behaviors are done to avoid punishment, and consequences tend to guide which behavior is right and wrong. This idea is that if the child is caught, the behavior must have been wrong, but if the child got away with the behavior, it must be right. The second stage of pre-conventional reasoning is instrumental relativist orientation. Within this stage, the child starts to recognize that there exists more than one right view. Making a decision about which behavior is morally right is based on satisfying one's needs and sometimes the needs of others. During this stage, punishment does not exist as a proof of wrong being, like as in stage 1, but something that the child wants to avoid. Kohlberg's second level of moral development is conventional reasoning. During this level, the individual sees moral reasoning based on their internalization of societal expectations set on them. The individual wants to fulfill these expectations and maintain and develop loyalty and support. This level emphasizes social rules and a community-centered approach. Individuals switch from what is in it for me to how will this affect my relationship with others. During the third stage, the individual wants to win approval and maintain the expectations of the individual's immediate group. They show concern for others and keep their relationships through trust, loyalty, and respect. The fourth stage is society maintaining orientation. This stage expands the focus from relationships with others to societal concerns. Along those lines, the right behavior is thought of as doing one's duty, respect for authority, and maintaining social order. An example of this stage could be when adolescents choose not to attend a party where they know that beer will be served, not because they're afraid of being caught, but because they know that it is not right.
Hi guys, this is Lindsay. I'm going to be going over Kohlberg's last level of his theory of moral development. So for level 3, which is post-conventional reasoning, this is when a person finds a balance between basic human rights and obligations and societal rules and regulations. This is when people move away from making decisions on law and make decisions based on moral values and principles. So there are 2 stages under level 3. Stage 5 is societal contract orientation. In this stage, individuals will follow the law, but they begin to think and understand that laws can or should be changed to better help the society. They know different societal groups have different values, but they also understand and all agree with the basic human rights such as life and liberty. One example of this stage is the United States Constitution. And I also have another scenario that's helped me understand these stages. It's a basic scenario. There is a man who has an ill wife. He has 2 options. He can either steal a medication that will help cure his wife, which is against the law, or he can follow the law and not steal the medication and let his wife die. So for stage 4, I'll just go back a stage. In this case, the man would not steal the medicine because it is against the law. But for stage 5, the man would steal the medicine because she is very ill and the laws do not take this into account. The stage 6 of Kohlberg's moral theory of development is universal ethical principle orientation. In this stage, right is defined by a conscious and act in accord with self-chosen ethical principles. One big difference between stage 5 and 6 is that stage 5 will follow the law, while stage 6, the individual may not follow the law and will do what is most just. An individual in this stage may not follow the law if it does not seem just to the racial group. One example of this is Martin Luther King Jr. He believed that we should obey the laws, but when laws are not just, we should disobey the laws and accept the penalties for disobeying them. And back to my scenario with the man and his ill wife. In stage 6, the man would take the medication without paying because objects are not as valuable as his wife's life. Although Kohlberg was seen as a leader when looking at moral development, he still had critics. Most of Kohlberg's subjects in his research were actually males raised in Western philosophical traditions. There was research attempting to support Kohlberg's theory done on people raised in Eastern traditions, but they never seemed to get past stage 3 or 4. The findings may suggest that people from Eastern philosophies have not reached higher level of moral development, but this is untrue. So with Kohlberg only measuring Western philosophies, it did not allow an easy way to measure those raised in different philosophies. Kohlberg was also criticized for age and gender bias. Carol Gilligan criticized him for his gender bias specifically, especially since his research was done on mainly males. So Gilligan actually focused on moral development from a care perspective that viewed people in their interpersonal communication, relationships, and their concerns for others.
Alright guys, it's now Danny Messner speaking, and I too had to input a picture so you could put a face to my voice, and I will be covering the interventions concerning developmental theories. In the pre-operational stages of Piaget's theory, you learn that children are very animated and utilize symbols and objects that demonstrate cognitive development. They often give inanimate objects a voice or make up a scenario to visualize thoughts, wishes, and feelings. For example, have you ever seen a child play with a superhero action figure? Often they will create a whole story in which gives the action figure a voice, makes noises such as wisping through the air, crashing into something, or even interacting with other characters. This is something we pick up at a young age, which is quite fascinating. Well, you may be asking yourself, how does this relate to nursing interventions? Well, nursing interventions recognize the use of play and incorporate it into a form of therapy, especially for our pediatric patients. This allows the patient to understand and be actively included in events taking place, especially during invasive or intrusive procedures. In Kohlberg's stages of pre-conventional reasoning, we learned that a person begins to ask why and often associates their situations with wrongdoing. Often children will egocentrically believe that they are being punished due to a fight with a sibling, disobeying parents, or overall poor behavior. The nurse's responsibility is to ensure that the patients did not become ill due to previous wrongdoings. During Kohlberg's stages of conventional reasoning, patients reflect upon self or others' expectations while making choices. As a nurse, we will experience patients or their families making life-changing decisions. The person or family making these decisions often seeks approval from others within their immediate group. As a nurse, it is crucial to support and understand the level of moral decision-making they are being faced with and be authentically present during these times. Overall, we as nurses may wear many different hats, and it is important to be flexible and creative while providing care. We may have to incorporate activities of play into situations to help our younger patients prepare or understand what is happening. For patients who may be struggling with coping or making life-changing decisions, we must be present in understanding these moments. We as nurses must always remember that we are patients' advocates, educators, cheerleaders, and support systems. By implementing play, education, support, and authentic presence, we will guide our patient throughout the journey they are on and be there every step of the way. Which scenario best fits Piaget's cognitive development theory as a nursing intervention?